9 names carved into stone by their enemies. No homeland. No language. No monuments of their own. They appeared, burned everything in their path, and then vanished. Egypt called them the Sea Peoples. For 3,000 years, no one knew who they really were. Who were the Sea Peoples, and what does DNA finally tell us about them? That is exactly what we are solving today. Because this is a cold case. And cold cases get solved. Here is the first thing every detective learns. Never trust a witness who only tells you what they want you to hear. Everything we know about the Sea Peoples comes from their enemies. Egyptian pharaohs. Hittite kings. Ugarit scribes. None of them are neutral. None of them are reliable. Pharaoh Ramesses III inscribed his victory over the Sea Peoples on the walls of Medinet Habu, one of the most dramatic carvings in history. But Egyptian pharaohs never lost. They never admitted weakness. And they never told you where the enemy came from. So we are left with 9 names and almost nothing else. The Peleset. The Shardana. The Shekelesh. The Weshesh. The Tcheka. The Denyen. The Ekwesh. The Teresh. The Lukka. 9 groups. 9 mysteries. Our job today, solve as many as we can. Every cold case has a breakthrough piece of evidence. For this one, it came from the bottom of the sea. In 1984, a sponge diver off the coast of southern Turkey stumbled across something extraordinary. A Bronze Age shipwreck. Perfectly preserved. 50 feet long. We call it the Uluburun wreck. What was on board? Copper ingots from Cyprus. Tin from Afghanistan. Gold from Egypt. Ebony from Africa. Pottery from Canaan, Greece, and Cyprus. Weapons from Italy. Amber from the Baltic Sea. A scarab bearing the name of Queen Nefertiti. One ship. Carrying cargo from at least 10 different civilizations. This is the world the Sea Peoples came from. Not a world of isolated kingdoms, a world more connected than most people realize. And when that world started breaking apart, the people who depended on it had nowhere to go. The Uluburun ship tells us something else. Among the weapons found on board, an Italian-style sword. Someone from outside the eastern Mediterranean was already moving through these waters. Long before the collapse. Let's start solving. First suspect, the Shardana. Here is what we know. They appear in Egyptian records 200 years before the collapse. Not as invaders, as mercenaries. Ramesses II trusted them so much they became his personal bodyguard. Elite warriors. Distinctive horned helmets. Fast forward to the collapse. The Shardana fight against Egypt. Then they disappear from the eastern Mediterranean entirely. Now here is where it gets interesting. On the island of Sardinia, far to the west, archaeologists discovered hundreds of bronze figurines. Warrior statuettes. Dating from the 12th century BC. They wear horned helmets. They carry round-studded shields. They look almost identical to the Shardana depicted in Egyptian carvings. And there's more. These figurines were found alongside anchors, evidence of ships capable of crossing the open Mediterranean. Also found, Mycenaean pottery. Cypriot copper ingots. Sardinia wasn't isolated. It was deeply connected to the Bronze Age world. The island may literally be named after the Shardana. They didn't conquer Egypt. They went home, or found a new one. Suspect 1, identified. The Shekelesh are harder to pin down. Hittite records describe them with one chilling phrase, those who live on ships. Not warriors from a city. Not an army with a king. People who lived permanently at sea. A Hittite king warned the governor of Ugarit about them. The Shekelesh were already raiding before the collapse. They raided Egypt in 1220 BC, then again in 1186 BC, then 1184 BC. They may have been responsible for destroying Ugarit itself. The leading theory links them to Sicily. The names are phonetically similar, and Sicily fits the geography. But here's the twist. Did they come from Sicily? Or did they end up in Sicily after the collapse? We don't know. But the Uluburun shipwreck may hold a clue. One of the items on board, possibly of Sicilian origin. Someone from Sicily was already trading in these waters before the Sea Peoples ever appeared. Suspect 2, partially identified. Investigation ongoing. Some cases go cold permanently. The Weshesh is one of them. They appear in exactly 2 Egyptian sources. Both from Ramesses III. Both from Medinet Habu. No homeland. No visual depiction. No DNA. No archaeology. Just a name. The Weshesh arrived. They fought. They vanished. And they left almost nothing behind. In every cold case there's a victim nobody remembers. The Weshesh are history's forgotten people. An entire culture, erased. Suspect 3, unknown. File closed. Now things get genuinely strange. The Denyen. One of the major groups at Medinet Habu. Also mentioned by the Hittites. Also mentioned in the Amarna letters. Here is the clue, Homer. In the Iliad, Homer calls the Greeks by 3 names. Achaeans, Argives, and Danans. Danans, used over 100 times. The Denyen of the Egyptian inscriptions. The Danans of Homer's epic. The same people? Most historians think it's possible. The Mycenaean world collapsed around 1200 BC. Palace cities burned. Kings lost power. People fled. If some of those people ended up on the Syrian coast, fighting south toward Egypt, Egypt might have called them the Denyen. And Homer, writing for centuries later, might have remembered their ancestors as the heroes of Troy. Here is the coldest detail in this entire cold case: the Trojan War and the Bronze Age collapse happened at the same time. The warriors who sacked Troy, where did they go when the war ended? When their own palaces were burning. Some of them may have become the Sea Peoples. Homer's heroes became Egypt's nightmare. Suspect for the Greeks themselves. In our last video, we told you about a landmark genetic study. Scientists extracted DNA from ancient graves in Ashkelon, one of the Philistine cities on the coast of Canaan. The results pointed to the Aegean, Greece, Crete, Anatolia. The Peleset, who became the biblical Philistines, were not local. They came from across the sea. If you haven't seen that video, the link is above. But the DNA story doesn't end there. Because the Peleset are just one group. And here is what makes the picture more complicated and more fascinating. Different Sea People groups appear to have different origins. The Peleset, Aegean. The Shardana, Western Mediterranean, possibly Sardinia. The Shekelesh, Central Mediterranean, possibly Sicily. The Lucca, almost certainly Anatolia. Lycia specifically. This is not an army. This is a convergence. Think about what that means. Mycenaean Greeks fleeing burning palaces. Sardinian warriors who'd spent generations trading with the East. Sicilian seafarers who knew these waters. Anatolian tribes caught between collapsing empires. All of them, simultaneously, running out of options. All of them, moving in the same direction. Toward Egypt. Toward food. Toward survival. The Sea Peoples were not an invasion. They were a tide of human desperation. Here is something neither Katrina nor your history teacher told you. The Sea Peoples may have had roots further west than anyone expected. By 1200 BC, Europe was already in chaos. A warrior culture known as the Urnfield people was spreading across Central Europe, ancestors of the Celts, the Etruscans, the Romans. They were moving south. Into Italy. Toward the coast. New slashing swords, longer, deadlier than anything before, were spreading from northern Italy across the entire Mediterranean. Historians believe this new weapon changed warfare completely. Mobile bands of sword-wielding infantry could now defeat the chariot armies that had dominated for centuries. The Bronze Age military system, built around chariots, was suddenly obsolete. And the people who figured that out first? They headed east. The Teresh, possibly the Etruscans, or their predecessors. The Shekelesh, possibly from Sicily, which sits right in the path of this westward expansion. The Sea Peoples may not have just come from the dying east. Some of them may have come from the rising west, warriors who saw opportunity in the chaos. This changes everything about how we see the collapse. It wasn't just the east falling apart. It was the entire Mediterranean world reshuffling at once. Cold cases don't always end with an arrest. Sometimes they end with disappearance. But the Sea Peoples didn't disappear. They became something else. The Peleset settled in Canaan. They became the Philistines of the Bible. Goliath, the giant warrior David killed, was probably one of them. The Shardana appear to have become the Nuragic builders of Sardinia. Those bronze warrior statuettes with horned helmets stood in the landscape of Sardinia for centuries after the collapse. The Shekelesh may have settled in Sicily. The Cheka took the coast of Canaan near Tel Dor. The Lucca returned to Lycia, where the Lycians would later fight alongside Troy. And the Denyen? One tribe of Israel, the tribe of Dan, is described in the Bible as a seafaring people, settling between the cities of Ekron and Joppa. Their most famous son was Samson. Just maybe, Samson's ancestors came from Bronze Age Greece. The Sea Peoples didn't destroy the Bronze Age and vanish. They destroyed the Bronze Age and became the Iron Age. So who were the Sea Peoples? They were Sardinian mercenaries who knew Egypt's rivers better than their own. They were Mycenaean warriors with nowhere left to go. They were Sicilian seafarers who took by force what they once bartered for. They were Anatolian tribes freed from collapsing empires. They were European warriors moving east as their world shifted west. They were climate migrants, economic refugees, opportunistic raiders. Sometimes all three at once, the same person, in the same decade. And here is the verdict the evidence demands: the Sea Peoples were not the cause of the Bronze Age collapse. They were its human face. When the system broke, drought, famine, earthquakes, trade failure, and millions of people lost everything. And they moved. Just as humans always have. Just as humans always will. 3,000 years later, we still call them invaders. Just as Egypt did. The question is whether we've learned anything since then. The past breathes. Next time, we go inside the last city they destroyed. Ugarit. A port on the Syrian coast. Abandoned for 400 years. Archaeologists found the final letters there, still in the kill. Never sent. Never answered. The last message from Ugarit. Next video. Subscribe. And leave a comment, which group of the Sea Peoples do you think is the most fascinating? I read every single one. See you next time.